Here's the brief news from the world over this week. Republican leaders in Washington have all but abandoned the nominee for the U.S. Senate in Alabama. Conservative firebrand Roy Moore is refusing to drop out of next month's general election amid recently announced allegations of sexual misconduct that occurred some 40 years ago. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and House Speaker Paul Ryan have both said Moore should step aside. The Republican National Committee and the National Republican Senatorial Committee have also severed ties with the former Alabama Chief Justice. Roy Moore said at a campaign stop on Tuesday, there is a spiritual battle going on in American politics. He claims to be the subject of a political witch hunt. Meanwhile, could it finally be the beginning of the end for Obamacare? Senate Republicans are moving forward with legislation that will scrap the Affordable Care Act requirement that Americans must get health insurance or pay a tax penalty. Finance Committee Chairman Senator Orrin Hatch confirmed that he was including the repeal in the markup of the GOP tax bill in order to, quote, help provide additional relief to low and middle-income families, end quote. The House Republican Study Committee swiftly endorsed the move. House Speaker Paul Ryan said he didn't want to complicate the vote on tax reform, so he didn't include it. He said by including it now, it could cost votes from moderate Republicans. We'll see. And gay rights supporters across Australia celebrated as a majority of Australians said they support gay marriage. The result of a 2-month mail ballot vote ensures that Parliament will consider a bill to legalize same-sex weddings before the end of the year. However, some government lawmakers have vowed to vote down gay marriage regardless of the survey's outcome. A spokesman for the Coalition for Marriage said that if lawmakers do pass gay marriage, they must ensure that freedom of speech and freedom of religion are protected. Back here in the U.S., the Supreme Court will hear a challenge to a California law that targets pro-life crisis pregnancy centers. The justices said Monday they will review the center's complaint that the new law, pushed by an abortion rights group, forces them to provide information about abortion and other services. Under the law, the pro-life pregnancy centers are required to notify pregnant mothers and post signage that abortions are available to them elsewhere and that they are available for free. The case will be heard by the High Court early next year. And a new report indicates that the Federal Bureau of Investigation could be probing Planned Parenthood. According to The Hill, the FBI has asked the Senate Judiciary Committee for documents regarding the alleged trafficking of body parts of aborted babies by Planned Parenthood and other abortion providers. The abortion giant came under fire in 2015 after investigative journalists from the Center for Medical Progress released a series of undercover videos that showed Planned Parenthood affiliates admitting to harvesting and distributing various body parts and fetal tissue. Planned Parenthood said that none of its affiliates has had any contact with the FBI. The Justice Department declined to comment. Under the law, abortion providers can only recover the cost related to supplying aborted babies for research. The Senate report concluded that Planned Parenthood instead profited by it, and in some cases, related costs weren't even calculated. On Monday, Vice President Mike Pence met with Vatican Secretary of State Cardinal Pietro Parolin. According to the White House, Vice President Pence and Cardinal Parolin discussed human trafficking, religious freedom in the Middle East, and fundamental values shared by the U.S. and the Holy See. Parolin told EWTN News that he also brought up the subject of immigration with the Vice President, asking for a, quote, compassionate approach to the issue of migration. The White House did not mention that in its press release. The Cardinal was in the U.S. to attend the United States Bishops' Fall Assembly in Baltimore. The American bishops are celebrating their centennial year as a conference. And at their conference, the U.S. bishops picked Archbishop Joseph Naumann of Kansas City to lead their committee on pro-life activities. Naumann edged out Chicago Cardinal Blaise Cupich by a very slim margin, 96 votes to 82. Now, this breaks the long-standing tradition of electing a cardinal to chair the pro-life committee. Archbishop Naumann said he intends to keep the focus of the committee on abortion and euthanasia. Cardinal Cupich, on the other hand, would have expanded the committee's focus to include capital punishment, health care, and poverty. Meanwhile, former president of the U.S. Bishops' Conference, Archbishop Joseph Kurtz, was elected chairman of the Committee on Religious Liberty. That committee was made permanent earlier this year. And Pope Francis is continuing to utilize his bully pulpit to wade into highly charged political and prudential issues. This past week, the Pope blamed, quote, short-sighted human activity for climate problems. He urged leaders in climate talks in Germany to take a global outlook as they negotiate ways to curb heat-trapping emissions. Francis said he shares their concerns about the rising sea levels and increasingly intense storms that threaten small islands. He decried in particular the state of the oceans, where overfishing and pollution are threatening fish stocks and sea life that are critical to Pacific livelihoods. And speaking a day earlier at a Vatican-hosted conference on nuclear disarmament, Francis said without equivocation, the threat of their use as well as their very possession is firmly to be condemned, end quote. This would include, he said, the possession of nuclear weapons as a deterrent effect, which creates a climate of instability and conflict and a mentality of fear. The Pope's comments went beyond his predecessors, who have consistently called for nuclear disarmament, but did not necessarily say that their possession was inherently immoral. Meanwhile, in church news, Cardinal Raymond Burke this week made a final plea to the Pope to clarify his teaching on Amoris Laetitia. Cardinal Burke's latest request came on the anniversary of when he and 3 other cardinals made public their dubia, or questions, concerning Pope Francis's teaching on communion for divorced and civilly remarried Catholics. Burke told the National Catholic Register's Edward Penton that confusion over Amoris Laetitia within the Church is continually worsening. He urged the pontiff to confirm his brothers in the faith with a clear expression of the teaching regarding Christian morality and sacramental practice. On these points, Pope Francis has remained silent, and a clarification does not seem to be forthcoming. We will continue to follow this story. And former Virginia Congressman Frank Wolf will update us, and much more when The World Over continues. Stay right there.